by that range from age 35 to 44. 35% of your people are ready, willing, and able to do recurring giving right now. So if you do not have that going on, you're missing out on serving the needs of more than a third of your people. If you're under the age of 65, you're comfortable with telephone giving. If you're under the age of 45, text giving, a third of the people appreciate and would employ text giving. Now, the oddest statistic we have here is that 43% of people still like the plate to come around. Tom told that story of when they stopped passing the plate. That hurt giving in his church. So there is now a card in the back of the pews at my church. If you give electronically, you can pull this card out and put it in the basket as it goes by. Now, people, you remember the envelopes? Envelopes are still a good thing. You use an envelope, you can check a box and put that envelope in the basket as it goes by. 43% of the people still want to do that. So, should you do it? Absolutely. Now, here's a profile of who gives what in your church. It used to be a third, a third, and a third. It's gotten worse. Gallup polling created this instrument called the ME25. They found that about 15% of the people are deeply involved. 50% are in that middle range, moderately involved, and 35% are occasionally, maybe once a month, probably Christmas and Easter only, or perhaps, as my wife calls them, creasters. So you have got to create electronic giving opportunities for the outer two rings. The deeply involved, they're probably on a recurring giving system already. But those outer two need spontaneous and episodic giving opportunities. Now, you should be asking for 4 different kinds of gifts per year, not 52. 52 is too much. So these 4, you need to have an annual stewardship campaign, a capital campaign at least once per year, not a campaign, but a capital ask. It might be for the parking lot or the air conditioning or windows. It doesn't matter, but some people only like to give to capital. So have one of those per year. Everybody needs to do a year-end Christmas ask. Sometimes we get 10% of all the money we raise in a year from that Christmas ask. And the emergency ask is one that should only come once per year, and you should, the joke is, plan your emergency out well in advance. So those are your 4 asks. The top one lends itself to recurring giving. The other 3, we have got to facilitate an ease of giving, which means we need to get our game on in terms of electronic giving. So I love this cartoon because they're looking for a new pastor in which they'll be innovative, full of vision, but the church will stay the same. That's the nature of church. We've always done it this way. Well, now is the time when we have to shift. And if we don't, we're going to suffer mightily from a financial perspective. So, Tom, I'm going to ask you to talk for a little bit as you did the research for both the stewardship system and this webinar. Please take your microphone off mute and talk about the considerations that we ought to keep at the top of mind.
Most people want me to keep my microphone on mute, so thank you for the encouragement. You know, it was interesting to me. I went into this thinking that mostly it would be younger folks, millennials, etc., who would be mostly interested in electronic giving. But that's not really the case. It seems to me that all ages are interested in this. For instance, Dennis just mentioned how much money can come into a church toward the end of the year for Christmas giving. There are a number of different statistics, but I have seen one that says that 10% of all church giving takes place in the last 3 days of the year. Now, wouldn't it be great if you had an electronic giving system whereby a person could do that? Sure, they could write a check. Sure, they could come by the office and drop off something before December 31st, but how much easier if they could go to your website and just plunk down maybe 10% of the bonus that they received for their work in that year. These are the kinds of things that doesn't make any difference what age you are. Everybody can use this. And once again, I discovered how easy these systems are to use. They're really very simple. And once you get logged in or set up or whatever, it just goes like clockwork. So maybe if we can go to what we got here. So those are the demographics. Basically, I think anyone is interested in electronic giving. Ease of use, a lot of the different entry points, we're going to call entry points something like a text to giving would be an entry point. A kiosk in the church atrium would be an entry point. Your website, your web page, your Facebook page could be an entry point. Your church office, of course, is also an entry point. Cost and contracts. We're not going to talk too much about that, a little bit about cost, but my experience has been that these are quite complicated. My advice would be figure out what it is that you think you want to do. Go online, and I'll give you a couple of places to look and see what's available. Talk to your friends, and then you've simply got to call these companies and talk to them and see what they offer and what it costs. There are endless varieties of costs. Security, most of these comply with the pretty high level of internet security transactions these days. Of course, we all know how prone to hacking that could be, but I honestly have not heard of any reports of these particular companies being hacked. Reporting, once again, as you talk to the companies, you'll discover some offer easy to pull reports, others not so much. So you'll need to maybe see the reports, talk to your friends, and see what they might find from a reporting system. So maybe we can look at the next slide and see what we have there. The roadmap of where we've come from. Plate collections and mailed envelopes, as we just saw, still a big chunk. Electronic fund transfer, we don't want to stop that. That's great for recurring giving. I mean, one of the problems of electronic giving is it can be episodic and not very episodic, unfortunately. We want recurring giving, and there's nothing like an electronic fund transfer that moves money from a bank account or a credit card or a debit card to the church on a regular basis. On my way here today, I stopped to get something to eat, and I paid for it with Google Pay, which I think is the way of the future. It's you've probably used it, Apple Pay or Google Pay, where you put payment information in your phone, your smartphone, just wave your smartphone over the payment terminal at your store, and just in about a half a second it goes through. It's very quick. Churches overseas use this a lot. Some churches actually have radio frequency IDs in their collection plates that they pass down the row. The person just waves their phone or their credit card over the plate. It picks up the data, they tap in the amount, bam, it's done. But we're talking today about a few other methods that we call modern. So we'll scoot over to the next page here and see what some of the varieties of modern giving might be.
So here's our list. This is the portfolio of giving activities that all of us have to employ. You got to offer electronic fund transfer giving. We have one church, I mean, the hundreds we have served, one has conquered this, and they have 80% of their revenue come through electronic fund transfer giving. That's the gold standard. At a minimum, you should be getting a third of your revenue through electronic fund transfer recurring giving. At a minimum, you've got to have an online website link so that when someone's at your website, they can click and enter all your data. That's the minimum. And social media linkage to that online link, that's easy. Those are easy. And those are absolute critical. You must have those. It's the bottom strata that we're going to talk about that's going to require all of us to take a little bit of a leap. Text to give is the most recent fad that everybody has got to embrace because everybody is comfortable with texting now, and it's quick. And there are two varieties basically within text to giving. Tom will talk about it in a little bit, but you can text and then the bill can end up through your telephone bill, or you can text and it can end up, as Tom's experience was, that later on he gets an opportunity to enter his particular Visa or debit card information once he gets back home, or can look at his phone. Giving kiosks, you have to do, particularly to meet those needs of your transient donors, people who are visiting or people who are not joiners or people who are under the age of 45. Mobile app is the future, and I'm not going to say that it's an absolute necessity. The church that I attend, we have a $3 million budget. We have a professional stewardship person on staff, and yet we do not have an app. I would love to have an app with my church information. All I've got to do is touch it and see what's coming up in the week ahead, opportunities to give to interesting things that are popping up, things I can volunteer for, social activities. That's coming. PayPal and Venmo, they're out on the future age. So Google Pay, as Tom said, the passing your phone over the basket seems mystical in its nature. But that's the future down there. A year from now, we'll have another workshop. Matter of fact, Tom will probably come to his workshop here next year in a self-driving car to talk about passing his phone over the basket. That's my prediction. So online giving benefits, the primary one, the considerations that Tom set up earlier, is that it's easy. And that's what we want. We want to make it as easy as possible. Somebody can click, make a one-time gift or a recurring gift. It's not complex nor time-consuming, but it's got to get that bottom line. It's good for the in-between tech user. The vendors, it's not. Tithely is on there. Secure Give, Kindred. Here are a handful, and my favorite is not here. Vanco. They're the ones who produce a lot of research data for those of us who are consumers. Tom showed his age a minute ago when he said, do your research and then call them up. And somebody else might say, do your research and click on their websites. But Tom's an old-fashioned guy. He would actually call up and talk to a human. But then a minute later, he showed how young he was by paying for his sandwich with Google Pay, just swiping his phone through the air mystically. So a lot of vendors are set up ready to help you, and there are 330,000 churches in this country, and there are more than 100 million of us who are active in church life, and all of us are looking to improve our skills in online giving. The costs are a little bit like a credit card, with the exception of that bottom, at 30 cents per transaction and maybe 3.5% fee. There are ways to get that cheaper, but it's more important that you start doing that right now rather than to look for the best deal. Now let's talk about text to give. You can put a text to give opportunity in every single Sunday bulletin. For a while, I thought QR codes were going to be the bomb, where a person could see what's going on in the church this week and just focus on the QR code, and that would take us to a link. That is not. It's still available, but it did not take fire like I thought it would. Text to give, I believe, is here to stay. Tom, do you want to talk about the two different ways you've seen text to give work?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The old way is, sounds kind of unbelievable, but the amount of your gift was actually added to your phone bill, which you would pay whenever you got your phone bill. And so the recipient of your gift, the church in this case, didn't really get your gift until you paid the phone bill. That's pretty much what happened now. There are two ways now in which text to give works. One is, thank you. One
One
way,
way is to, as I discovered last week, is to
send
send a text to whatever number the church publishes,
and
then you get a link to another website. Or some text to give.
Some
text to give.
Okay.
Some text to give take you directly to the church's site, so that you don't have to go to an outside vendor. Some consider that to be an advantage. Maybe yes, maybe no. In any case, you're going to need to set it up the first time you use it. But once you do that, every time you go to church, or every time you're not in church, for that matter, I'll give you an example. There was an article in the paper last week that happened to mention my church that was doing something unrelated to Sunday service.
I thought, that's something I already support. I could text them an amount that
day in support of whatever this thing was I saw in the newspaper. People can think of some reason to give almost any time. And with text to give, it's good to go. Very easy, very quick. It's not a recurring giving way to do it. So it's, as it says on the slide, is for in-between folks. I might just add, we're talking about different entry points, text to give being one, church websites being another, cell phone, smartphone apps would be another. Most providers today, and you saw a few names earlier, such as Secure Giving, PushPay, Tithely, most of those, not all, but most, offer all of those entry points. So you can pick and choose from the offerings that each particular company have and take the ones that you think will work for you. Maybe you think kiosk giving is good, but your church isn't ready for it. Okay, take two other ones. Take the website and take text to give. So I think it would be important to choose a vendor that can offer you all of the entry points that you want. Just by way of example, PayPal, which is one of the older vendors, does offer the entry points, except not text to give. So just keep that in mind. If we move along to the next slide, there we go. I have to talk to my manager over here. Oh, there we go. Okay. There are an unbelievable number of vendors. Tithely, Secure Give, PushPay. These are some of the more common ones. I came across one called MyWell. Don't know anything about MyWell, except it doesn't, the fees, it takes no profit. It charges you whatever their costs are. Most of these companies, of course, are for-profit organizations, as they should be, but some aren't. So you might get a better deal that way. So once again, check these out, see what you think. Okay, I think that slide is pretty clear.
Giving kiosks, okay? Because I saw this explode in one of our clients, and they didn't use a sophisticated kiosk as is pictured here. Rather, they had an iPad with the square that goes in this port, and one person asked for it one time. They responded, they set it up, and within 2 months they were getting 50 gifts per weekend at an average gift of $50 per gift. It's $2,500 per weekend, $10,000 per month. That's considerable. That's formidable. Yes, it's going to cost you $1,000 to set up, and it is an enormous amount, just like making a purchase. Self-directed, you slide it, you type in information, and the information is done. And it is, I think you ought to have 2 or 3 of these kiosks in the foyer of your church. You know, modern architecture says you ought to have a foyer that is 1/3 the size of your worship space. If indeed you could pull that off, put your kiosks in different locations. Now, I had the good fortune to discover this. My wife and I are church nerds. We were in San Francisco, and we went to church at the cathedral downtown. It's a beautiful facility. It just lifts your eyes up. You feel like you're in a cathedral, the most modern of cathedrals imaginable. And on our way out, the kiosk was facing us. So, of course, we stopped and made a donation. And I will never forget that day because we walked down the steps, and as we crossed the street, we accidentally joined stride for stride in the Gay Pride Parade, which I was totally unprepared for, as I was unprepared for the scantily clad 80-year-old man right ahead of me. And I asked my wife in hushed tone, "Do you see what I see?" Because I kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing. And she says, "Yes, Dennis, I do." I said, "What do you make of that?" She said, "Gravity can be a cruel master." I thought, well, that's an astute observation, but I was thinking of something else. So if San Francisco can have this, if a cathedral can have this, you can have it, and you can do it right now. It just takes a little bit of investigation to see what system will fit with yours. So ideally, if you have that, you can collect data so that you can promote further gifts to that donor in the future. You want to capture their information, their contact opportunity, so you can send them an email, a text, or an invitation for giving in the future. Now, here are a handful of vendors that you can contact, and they all have a pretty good track record. We have no bad consumer reports on any of them. It's going to cost you $1,000 to $2,000 in a small monthly fee. It's going to take a task force a couple of months to figure it out and to put it into place. But now, wireless technology is with us everywhere, so it's no longer a headache. It doesn't need a power source nor a connection, so you can put these anywhere. You do have to worry a little bit about somebody picking it up and carrying it away. So the thing I've seen work the best is a hard fixture connected to a rolling device. So it might weigh a couple 100 pounds. It'd be difficult for someone to carry that off, but it's basically a device about the size of an iPad. It doesn't cost much to maintain. It does not cost much to integrate it with your current donation tracking software, but that would be a good place to start. Who do you employ right now to track your donations? And you might inquire with them. Tell them you'd like to start a kiosk giving in your church. Do you have a software service that could facilitate that in our church? Now let's talk about mobile apps. This is the future, and we run our lives with mobile apps, from news to purchasing things. So it's much more than just communicating. So I would invite you to begin that exploration. Now, your mobile app ideally would do more than just be a roster, access to the roster of the other members of the church, but it would be great to facilitate giving. So if I wanted to donate and I was in church or right after worship services, I could conceivably touch that app, click on what I wanted to give to, and make my donation right there. And if it was an app that I had installed and already entered my giving information, it would be very easy for me to click to have an automated gift occur without me re-entering my source of funds information, whether it's a Visa, debit card, or a bank account. If that information is preloaded, and it's, as Tom said, it's at this point a fairly secure operation. We have not had a lot of church data leakage reports. But if my data is already in there, it's conceivable that it could be a 3-touch operation. Touch the app, touch to give, and then hit the button to make it happen. That would be ideal. And this, I'm going to give it a year from now, we'll have easy to buy mobile apps for your church. So they're just being developed right now. And if you're an entrepreneur, you may consider getting into that business. Here are the mobile app vendors. I again would start with the company that you employ now to track your donations and ask them. That first question would be, do you provide a mobile app so that it can be integrated, so that we use current data and link to a new way to connect with people? The costs are a lot like a Visa, like we talked about earlier. It's going to be 3 to 4% and 30 cents per transaction. Not much money, but and I'm going to hold back on saying you have to do it this second. But you just keep thinking of this, and when you attend a different church or talk to your mates, and perhaps you're a member of ICSC, the International Catholic Stewardship Council, or NACBA, the National Association of Church Business Administrators, that you might ask them what are they doing and get yourself involved with this, just to see what is being developed on the cutting edge. I just got a question. Are you going to provide us with a copy of the slides? Yes. We'll send you a copy of this. If you've emailed us to join this, then we've got your email. We'll send you a copy of these slides. And there's a little bit of value to that. I mean, you're going to have names of all those vendors. Tom is our content developer, and he's done a ton of research preparing for this. So yes, we will we'll provide that to you, and there's a recording of this as well if you'd like to watch it again later. Now, let me shift to talk about. Let me ask Tom to imagine back when he was first employed by a church, and he left the seminary and he began his employment many years ago. What do you wish you would have known if you were a new seminarian graduate today going to work in a modern day church? What do you feel like the top priorities ought to be for that person now as a manager or a leader in a church with this electronic giving opportunities knocking at your door? So Tom, tell me your top 3 priorities.
Wow. Okay. Well, to be honest, like probably many pastors and church employees, I was afraid of money, afraid of dealing with it. And so maybe the first priority is just to get comfortable talking about money. In church development, we've worked with a number of churches, and just getting them to say the word money or capital campaign is a pretty scary prospect, which may seem surprising to those of you online here today. But so that's maybe the first thing to do. And secondly is I would encourage you to challenge people about money. I know that can be a little bit iffy sounding too, but money is a way we value what's important to us. And so you want people to contribute to your church because it's good for your church. It's good for them. That's what we're here for, is to support one another. So I guess those are some of the things. And thirdly, not to be afraid. Try these new things. Get a committee together. Talk to people. Get some of these things. Set up a website or get a mobile app. Get people to try it and get a committee to try it and see how it feels. Give it a month or two and then go on from there. There are a number of websites that I found that you might want to go to get the names of some of these electronic giving vendors. One of the websites is called Capterra, C-A-P-T-E-R-R-A, capterra.com. It plays to mixed reviews, but it offers supposedly anonymous reviews of a number of different electronic giving websites. So you might check out capterra.com. Not endorsing it, just telling you that it's there. Another website you might want to go to is paperlesstrans.com, kind of like it sounds, paperless trans, T-R-A-N-S.com. This one is sponsored by PayPal, so it's going to be in favor of PayPal. But it still gives you, I think, some information about different websites. Honestly, you can spend a morning researching these things and walk away with just a ton of information that will lead you to the next steps. So those are some of the places you might go. Give us a call. We'd love to know what your experience is. If you're using these vendors or not and thinking about it, let us know how it goes. Write us a story. We'll publish the story, and that'll help other people on their search as well. What do you think about that, Dennis?
Thank you, Tom. for inviting their participation. That's how we have run our organization, is to give away all that we know, and it comes back to us, of course. As you sow, so shall you reap. So we try to give away and share everything that we have come across that works. We wrote a book. We put together this book, Stewardship System, and it's not about to be made into a movie starring George Clooney, but nonetheless, it's very entertaining and chock full of case studies and research tidbits that you can use. If you contact us, we'll send you one of these for free. And our apologies for such horrible audio quality earlier. Forgive me. This is the least I can do to apologize to you. Now,
okay, Dennis, we have a question before we get ready to sign off. Jim writes in, our church just implemented a church management program named Breeze to track our donations. To my knowledge, this company does not offer these types of integrated giving programs. Would it be bad to set these modern giving methods up if they do not integrate with our current CMS, or can this work independently?
This can work independently, and I would encourage you, please do set them up, even if it's not perfect. Act now. The return on investment is fantastic. I mean, the most expensive of these is going to be the kiosk, and your return on investment will be immediate. So the $1,000 that you spend up front will be recouped back within the first month that you have that up there. And from then on, it's highly profitable. So the future, we've taken a glimpse at the future today. And in the future, all of these will be integrated. That is coming. But the worst possible thing is to behave like that cartoon that we looked at earlier. We want a new pastor full of vision and inspiration, but our church will stay the same. That's, that lack of inertia is death knell for a church. Now, I put that statistic up there, and we breezed by it very quickly, that giving to religion today is in the low 30%. And just 20 years ago, it was over half of all donations went to religious causes. So giving to religion has declined. We are not keeping pace. The need for a relationship with God will always be with humanity, and it's our job to facilitate that. And we have got to keep up. And if we don't, life is going to pass us by. So I don't want to get on my high horse, on my soapbox, but I'm begging you, please do something. Take one of these methods and implement these today. Now, if you'd like Tom or me, and when I say Tom and me, I really mean Tom. He's smarter, more connected, and he's done all the research. This workshop has been done by a technology called Zoom, and it works normally quite well. It was our fault that we kind of messed up the audio earlier, but most of the time it's very clear and very easy. If you have a stewardship committee and you would like Tom to visit with your stewardship committee, he could do that to talk about these subjects, and it's no cost to you. He could be sitting at home with his computer on, walking through these same things, and every person in that committee meeting could be in their home. We can send out a Zoom invitation. I just had one of these meetings yesterday with 5 other people, stretched from Virginia to San Francisco for a committee meeting. And the audio is crisp, the video is clear, and Tom can walk through and share the screen to show everybody the same thing. Doesn't really cost anything, but to have an expert like Tom available for free, it's a tremendous resource. So we're here to serve the church. I mean, what we hope, we give this away because we love it. What we hope is when you do a capital campaign, you invite us to at least give a sales pitch. No, we expect no guarantees or anything. We would just like to be invited to be part of the dialogue. That is our hope. And even if you don't, we would still give this information away because, as Tom said earlier, money is one of the blessings from God, and we are a conduit for those blessings. So I believe that a person's generosity is strongly connected to their sense of spirituality and their relationship with God. That belief, that understanding that everything we have comes from God is expressed through 1 Peter 4:10. But boy, it makes a big difference in having a happy life. And that relationship with God is really why church development exists. So with that in mind, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We will send you the slides. We're available for further questions, and we're available to visit with you and your stewardship committee. Do not hesitate to ask. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.